Coming up, this week, the BBC crumpled like a wet cardboard box and apologised for referring to the Reform UK Party Limited as far-right in a news report, prompting this reaction from self-styled man of the people and Reform's privately educated multi-millionaire director Richard James Sunley Tice. There are very significant implications of calling a political party, and by implication its leader and senior leadership team, far right. It is that which is defamatory and libellous. There's a lot to unpick in this bizarre and misleading statement, quite aside from the question of whether or not Reform UK is indeed a far-right party. Stay tuned. If it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, then it's probably a duck. Reform UK Party Limited, formerly the Brexit Party Limited, blends an anti-immigration message with other far-right positions in areas including culture, nationalism and the climate crisis. But what does far-right actually mean, and why is snowflake Richard Tice quite so triggered by it? The terms left-wing and right-wing date back to the setup of the French Parliament during the French Revolution in the late 18th century. Conservatives, anti-revolutionaries, sat in the right wing of the Parliament building, the socialists and revolutionaries sat in the left wing, and the French revolutionary equivalent of centrist dads sat in the middle. The seats on the far right wing were taken by the most nationalistic, conservative and pro-monarchist members of the Parliament, and that's really all that the term far right means in any literal sense. Any implied meanings of the term vary from country to country, culture to culture, and even person to person. I don't believe for 1 second that any British court could find the term to be libellous. But the British legal system, of course, allows multi-millionaires like Tice to threaten others with legal action in the knowledge that a defence to a libel claim is beyond the financial means of the average person. And for the BBC would be a very difficult political situation, given that they're already in the sights of the ruling Tory party for perceived left-wing bias. Tice is just a multi-millionaire bully. Let's take another look at his statement in reaction to the BBC's label of far-right. There are very significant implications of calling a political party, and by implication its leader and senior leadership team, far-right. Very significant implications? Such as, what, death threats? Riots on the streets? The breakdown of law and order? Well, no, not exactly. Tice defined those significant implications as being that he and others could lose their bank accounts or the ability to get a mortgage. The idea that multi-millionaire Tice would need a mortgage is laughable, as is the idea he would lose his bank account. This is the fictitious right-wing trope and conspiracy theory about banks withdrawing banking facilities from anybody whose politics they don't agree with, following Coote's decision to move Nigel Farage's account to a sister bank due to his low account balance. This is not what I call a very significant implication, either for Tice or the other 7 directors of Reform UK Party Limited, let alone serious implications in a general news sense for the wider population. And there's another falsehood in Tice's statement. He refers to a political party. A true political party is an association of members, each having a say in the running of the party. Reform UK Party Limited is a limited for-profit company. Sure, they take payments from gullible people to buy something they call membership. And by the way, they also take payments from gullible and self-important gammons to apply to be a prospective candidate for Reform UK. But having studied their website in some detail, www.reformparty.uk, those membership fees don't seem to buy you true membership, by which I mean any say in how the company is run. Members of British political parties have a say in voting for party officials and other aspects of party management. But Reform UK Party Limited is the opposite of that. An autocratic, top-down, for-profit organisation, not a membership association or even a true political party. But let's finish with Tice's statement. There are very significant implications, that's bollocks, of calling a political party, more bollocks, and by implication, that's subjective, Its leader and senior leadership team far right. He went on to say, it is that which is defamatory and libellous. So he's claiming that it's defamatory and libellous by implication. Implication! Good luck with that one in court. The implications of some of Reform's policies are certainly enough for them to be branded far right. Here's some quotes from the Reform UK Party Limited website. The small boats crisis threatens our security. Dog whistle racism, if I ever heard it. Brexit has been betrayed. The betrayal word. A standard rallying call for the far right, enemies of the people and all that, from the rubric of propaganda from totalitarian states going back centuries. Multiculturalism has imported separate communities that reject our way of life. Completely untrue. Whole communities rejecting our way of life, whatever that's meant to mean. In reality, it's meaningless. And again, this is a statement that I personally associate with the far right. That's my genuine opinion. I believe what I'm saying. Can you be sued for expressing an honestly held opinion? Is that not part of this very way of life that Reform UK are trying to reference as some racist dog whistle? Woke ideology has captured our public institutions, the website insists. They're clearly against woke. What does woke mean? Well, for me, it simply means being aware of racism and other social injustices and prejudices. So, Reform UK are clearly against an awareness of racism and other social injustices. Sounds and walks like a duck, doesn't it? And what about this claim? Only Reform will stand up for British culture, identity and values. Nowhere on the website do they even attempt to define British culture, identity and values. But the implication to me is clear. If you're not British or from a British family, or if you want to see some changes to our culture, identity and values, then you are the enemy of Reform UK. This is probably a key issue in defining what far right really means. It's all about nationalism as opposed to patriotism. Patriotism is a love of one's country, whereas nationalism is the belief that one country and its people, identity, values and culture are superior to others.
Leaders of the Brexit campaign have engendered an atmosphere where some people believe it is open season now for racism and...
Patriotism can be found in both left and right-wing politics. Nationalism is a far right-wing ideology. The right have a strong sense of national and cultural identity. And look, I accept that can be a positive thing, but the far right take it further and perceive integration with other cultures as a threat to their sense of identity. In doing so, they reject the concept of diversity and start to see those of different races or cultures as potential usurpers of their country and diluters of their cultural values. This is exactly the standpoint of Reform UK Party Limited. The more you look at them, the more duck-like they appear to be. Their website includes transphobic references to knowing what a woman is, and I could only imagine the fate of transgender people should Reform ever get into power. And the whole spectrum of the LGBTQI community could be their next target. Another indicator of whether an organisation is of the far right is their efforts to create a sense of urgency in defending a nation or community against an external threat. We've seen this throughout history with the persecution of people of colour, homosexuals, Jews, Muslims and other minority groups. Never forget Reform UK Party Limited's principal shareholder Nigel Farage and his infamous breaking point poster during the Brexit referendum campaign, which sought to depict immigrants as invaders in order to unite and mobilise the far right against the common enemy. And to bring us more up to date, darling of the far right 30p Lee Anderson was unveiled earlier this month as Reform UK's first ever MP after he was stripped of the Conservative whip over comments he made about London Mayor Sadiq Khan being controlled by Islamist mates, which was widely condemned as Islamophobic by everyone except the far right. And then we had this post on ex-Twitter this week. Exhibit number 1 in the case for Reform UK being far right. Stop the boats, they say, by 1. Declaring national security threat. The idea that there's an invasion by inflatable dinghies full of armed enemies hell-bent on total war. With fascism, everything is a war. 2. Leave ECHR. Only totalitarian Russia and Belarus are non-members of the ECHR amongst European countries. You're judged by the company you keep, Reform UK. 3. Zero illegals. Not humans, illegals. A human being cannot be illegal. It's an attempt to dehumanise people, the far-right trick of describing Jews and other minorities as being subhuman, cockroaches and other such language. 4. Department of Immigration staffed by believers. In other words, jackbooted thugs prepared to act illegally. 5 and 6 are laughable. Just ship them off to other countries who, Reform UK assume, will just bend to the will of the British. Palpable far-right nonsense. Reform offers only slogans and simplistic solutions to complex problems that appeal to mainly older, less educated people. And I know that makes me sound elitist and judgmental, but it's the truth. It's only what the poll breakdowns tell us. And through that demographic, Reform UK Party Limited has some momentum in current polls and are now polling in double figures. But thankfully, it has underperformed in recent by-elections in comparison to its political predecessors, the Brexit Party and UKIP. With current Labour Party policies and mood music, the pendulum is only likely to swing away from the far right about as far as the centre ground at best. But I'll take that as a first step, however small, to undo the damage of the past 14 years of right-wing rule.